Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of late season offense matches. Following last week's Naga shenanigans, I'm trying something different this week as well. Morgan's Refine had me pretty interested when I saw it, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to commit too many resources to him, even if I really liked how well he would work with the Tamari and Sabotage combo that I'm already running in light weeks. I decided to try him out in the Tempest trial with a relatively low investment kit, and ended up absolutely loving his performance, enough that I decided to commit and march him up. Having a full spectrum Plegian effect is an incredibly powerful refine, especially for a free-to-play friendly unit like Morgan. I actually think he's a much better user of it than the premium version, Katarina, who's really held back by being a flyer. As an infantry unit, Morgan doesn't have to worry much about archers, and he also gets access to some really fantastic extra toys like null follow-up or lulls. I decided to build Morgan as a unique flavor of Omni-Tank to really capitalize on his weapon. Close foil is a really useful variation of close counter, especially in light weeks where the only dragon you'll normally run into is Sothis, and even she is fairly rare. Being able to counterattack melee is important, since anything that survives a combat with him will also clear their visible penalties from things like Tamari, Sabotage, and Morgan's own weapon, which makes them dangerous if danced. Null follow-up is a very powerful skill in Aether Raids thanks to the rising number of skills that prevent or enable follow-up attacks. While I mostly gave it to Morgan with Bramimonds in mind, it's also very useful for dealing with other common threats like Eliwood, Brave Hector, Dual Leaf. It's very rare for him to find an enemy he doesn't outspeed when they're debuffed, so forcing his opponents to fight on a speed check is a very good thing. Panic Smoke might seem like a bit of an odd or greedy choice for Morgan, since Pulse Smoke tends to be the go-to skill for tanking. While it's true that Pulse Smoke is extremely helpful for dealing with pre-charged specials that could, in theory, overwhelm him, I've been seeing a lot more visible buffs on defense teams lately, and being able to turn those into penalties basically hands Morgan a free win, since his weapon doubles down on it. Beyond that, I do have Pulse Smoke on other teams, so I decided to let Morgan specialize in his own niche. I was seriously considering Mystic Boost for his seal, but settled on attack speed solo instead. As strong as he is, he does sometimes still need a bit of extra damage to secure knockouts, and the extra speed helps to guarantee his doubles. The rest of his team is really just here as support. Gunthra, sadly, didn't have her remix update for this week, but even the base chilling seal is still pretty useful once the defense team spreads out. I also gave her Chill Res after the first match, just for the edge cases where Milla can't quite meet the Sabotage check. Milla and Error provide the bulk of the debuffs thanks to Sabotage Res, which we got from Solon, and Tamari. The Fortress skills and Phantom Res make them extremely consistent, which is important since Morgan relies on them pretty heavily, while Isolation and Disarm Trap are extremely useful tools to have. Docker continues to be an excellent buff and smite support, while Peony's role as the team's dancer never stops being useful. While attacked opening doesn't do anything for this team, it's more of an enabler for some of the others that I didn't end up using at all, so bit of a waste in the end, but it's good to have the flexibility. Now that we've gone over the team, let's get the first match. This is going to be a bit of a slow start to the week. It's mostly just a use fire legendaries in a season and sort of insert them so that you have a rotating band of blessed units. Selk in particular feels like she's just using an arena build. Hell in her bonus week, Sothis, and an Eldigan and Lilina. A lot of this is just base kits too, so I'm not expecting Morgan to have any trouble with this. If I can remember how I wanted to arrange my units. Alright. I'm going to take one turn just to get in position and wait for Docker's wave skills to kick in.
Ready. Yes. If you say so. Okay. Like this.
And once we're ready, we can just go in. Something I really like about Morgan, actually, is how easy it is to soak shrines from him. Docker's always soaking bright shrines from him, and Mill is always soaking dark shrines, so we don't have to worry about those debuffs at all. Oops. So this is actually an interesting situation. I somehow forgot that after we soak this dark shrine, Milla won't actually be able to sabotage Alina, so we're not actually getting her as debuffed as I would like, which is a little unfortunate, but that's fine. Mostly because we still do more damage to her than the healing tower can heal, so on the next turn, she's gonna get knocked out anyway. It does mean that I can't quite just lead Gunther here to pick up a pot, but that's okay.
Like this.
Yep. And while she can dodge the Sabotage res, she can't dodge the Tamari, so
just as I planned.
The pre-combat special doesn't get anything done at all. Celica can do some, just because of the true damage from her weapon. But doesn't really do enough. And well, a close foil Morgan is Hell's worst nightmare. And while Eldigan's Courtly Candle keeps him alive through one hit, he's working with something like 5 res once all of the penalties are active, so it's not ideal for him. I might need to take one more turn here, depending. I don't think Morgan's going to have any problems handling this, but there's a chance that he can't quite get.
What's the plan?
Oh, he's fine. Never mind. So, with that in mind, we can just have Gunther go break this pot.
Yes.
Flip Morgan over this way.
I bestow my blessing.
Get Milla in range, and have him finish this off.
Atone at once.
Checkmate.
Yeah, might have been a slow start, but this was a very nice test drive for Morgan. Looking forward to the next match. This was not something I was expecting to see, and it's a little unfortunate because this team is set up very nicely to counter Morgan's usual approach. They've got 3 infantry pulses on this team, including on this +10 Ophelia, and it enables specials on most of the team, including this Miracle on Libra, who is interesting because, you know, only 4-star +10 and not even refined on the Legion's axe, but this Libra is actually one of the most dangerous parts of the team. because it's almost impossible to knock him out in one hit, and if he gets a single hit, then he panics his target, which makes whatever he hits a lot more vulnerable to the rest of this. I am pretty sure I've done my math correctly for this, which in theory means that Morgan actually gets to tank all of these pre-charged specials, except maybe for Alm. We might be too low on health by the time we get to him. Dagger's Pathfinder is going to come in very useful here.
If you say so.
And so is Morgan's weapon, which is not something I'm usually relying on with this team, since we have Zotamari and Sabotages.
Okay.
But he can actually debuff all three of these enemies
The glimmer of life. Like this.
without actually activating the map first, which is very important, because without that he wouldn't survive Ophelia and Lilina. So I'm going to start by taking Libra. Oh, oops. Taking Libra off of this field. And once that's done, Dagger actually lets Peony dance Morgan, which is important. He can't quite tank Flora at the same time as Ophelia and Lilina. So we're going to move Dagger down here, to reposition Peony,
Okay.
and then plant Morgan here. I'm going to leave Mila here. I'm not sure where Micaiah is going to end up, but we should be able to tank her and Flora next turn anyway.
I mustn't fail.
You won't win like that.
A large part of why this works is that we actually got to charge Soul before this round of combat. Without that, he wouldn't have been able to take those back to back. So, it might look a little odd, but we're actually going to tank this Glacies as well,
What's the plan?
and just knock Micaiah out instead.
Checkmate.
Flora's weapon doesn't really do anything for her against a magic opponent, since usually her res is enough to handle any magic damage she comes across.
What can I do? It will be done.
Okay. And then we just tank Flora and wait for Alm.
Don't underestimate me.
Sadly, we don't get to heal because of the guard effect.
Of course.
So I'm going to take one more turn for this. I can't quite reach this pot this turn. Not safely. But it's fine.
Ready. I bestow
And we'll
my
get
blessing.
Mila over here.
If you say
Dagger
so.
down here.
The glimmer of life.
Flip Peony out of the way.
Okay.
Yep, and we can just break this chair too. Just to make sure that Morgan will always get in range. Good.
Goodness.
And well, now that Morgan's topped off, I
Okay.
think we can tank Alm safely. So, I'll just move air over here. Move Morgan down and dance him back up.
Okay.
I'm not worried about giving him the extra defense from Dogger because Alm's attack is already low enough that he's not doing normal damage. He's only getting the damage from his weapon and Luna.
You won't escape. Checkmate.
And down he goes. That was a fun one. Let's see what we get next. This is going to be an interesting match too. I can't say that I've seen a +10 Camus like any time. I think I don't know if I've ever seen one before. And this one's really impressive. I imagine that whoever this is probably really excited now that they've announced the distant counter-refines. Which I'm also personally really happy for. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do for Zelgius. Hopefully it's good. As long as he gets a slaying effect, I think he'll be okay with it. This is a triple mythic setup, so it makes these 3 units really bulky. And there's a lot of threat here between the pre-charged Luna and Camus, and then just backing them up with Bramimond and Leaf. And a Farsafe Hector covering them from any hit-and-run nonsense is a really good way to set things up. I don't like weaponless dancers, personally. I think that at that point, you're better off running a dancer who has a weapon that provides you an effect that helps your team. When they're weaponless, they can't be baited, but at the same time, it just makes things a lot easier for the enemy team to play around. In my experience, at least. So, I'm going to take a few turns to set this one up. I can't actually just tank this outright, mostly just because of this Fatal Smoke on Leaf. It would mean that after Camus attacks, Leaf would go in second, and we wouldn't heal from that, which is a problem. So Morgan can only tank, if Camus is involved, 2 of these major threats in one turn.
What can I do?
But with a little bit of creative
If you say so. Yes.
approach,
Good morning.
we can actually wipe out half their
The
team
glimmer
pretty
of
safely.
life.
What's the plan?
Just a little bit.
Like this.
I'm going to leave Milla over here. I'm just going to keep Triandra isolated, which makes the entire strategy much easier to deal with.
Got him.
And I'm actually going to have Morgan tank from
Yes. Ready.
this side of the Dark Shrine,
Death's caress.
because Camus can't actually attack through this Dark Shrine,
Okay.
which will let Morgan handle Bramimond, Leaf, and Hell before we have any other problems to worry about.
The glimmer of life. If you say
Let's
so.
smite Morgan up. I'm not worried about getting the extra attack and res, since both Bramimond and Leaf have a lull.
Goodness. It will be done. Good morning.
And we can dance Milla up here,
I
which
bestow my
means that
blessing.
Morgan will be in range to get her buffs. Leaf does a solid amount, but between him and Bramimond, he actually does more damage, and even though he has more health to lose, it's still enough that Bramimond won't attack before that. And Bramimond can do a decent chunk too, but we can actually heal from them,
Checkmate.
so it's nowhere near as bad. Hell, meanwhile, can't do any damage at all. And all she really does is recharge soul. So So this ended up being a bit more of a movement puzzle than I'd like. I was hoping that Camus would end up here, and that he would get sabotaged with Hector. Unfortunately, he went a different direction, so I'm going to need to spend a turn just backing up.
Right, boss? I bestow my blessing.
The glimmer of life. What can I do? Good morning.
What's the plan?
And waiting, so that we can get some debuff supplied. Unfortunately, Hector doesn't really get hit by much here, other than the chill res. But that shouldn't be a problem. Oh. Except that I now need to do more math. Fine. Okay, I had to do a little more math just to check this, but I think we can actually have Morgan tank both Camus and Hector this turn, even though Hector's only got a res debuff, and that means we're not super penalizing his attack. He's not going to do enough damage to really threaten Morgan, and Camus should actually attack first. And since we have a soul ready to heal back from it, we shouldn't actually be in too much trouble.
What's the plan?
Ready. Of course.
It will be done.
Okay, and let me say go.
A waste of life. You won't win like that. Just as I planned.
Alright. And then from here it's just a matter of walking up to Triandra and taking her down. Very nice. That Camus is actually really spooky. Let's see what we see next time. This is going to be a very fun match, I think. Mostly just because, well, they're fielding a +10 Reinhardt with Deathblow 7. Along with this +10 Eliwood, who is business as usual here. Panic Smoke and Lunge is a great combination for him, even if it's been a little less effective for me lately against some of the save armor teams. But I think it still does a lot of work overall. You've also gotten Edelgard, who's as usual hard to isolate self. Ground Orders is good for Bramimonds, and it can help Reinhardt too in case of a stray tactic room. And they've also got you Peony with her many combat attack buffs. Sturdy Impact, Hardy Bearing Bramimond, and a bonus weak Hell. I'm going to take a few turns to get this one going. Just because I think that Morgan's actually going to end up finishing this in a single round, and I want to make sure that we have the pots before we actually pull the trigger on this.
Okay.
So,
Yes.
here,
Of course. Ready.
let's just clear our way
What can
through
I
most
do?
of these structures.
Right, boss?
Whoever moves up here,
Like this.
moves here. Dogger's Pathfinder is going to let Peony catch up to air here,
Maybe this way.
which is very useful. It means we can pick both of these pots up pretty cleanly
If you say so.
and pull everybody back to safety. And then we'll just spend one more turn getting into position.
Good morning. Of course. Death's caress.
And then we'll start this fight next turn. I could have, if I wanted to, play it safe, broken this panic manor as well, which would give us a chance to take hell off the field and get rid of this inevitable death before we start these fights, but
Got him.
unless I've done something horribly wrong with my math, Morgan's got this pretty handily.
What can I do?
Maybe this way, if you say so.
And he's actually still in range of Milla's
It will be done.
nurturing breath even from here. It always impresses me just how far of a range that has. Reinhardt moves in first. He can get a chunk of damage in, thanks to the drive from Peony and the combat debuff from Hell. And Bramimonds can do the same. But neither of them do enough to put Morgan into any real danger. And they're also the only two on the team that can actually do any damage to him. Edelgard moves in here next, since
You won't win like that.
he's the only one who, or he's the one who heals Morgan the least. And from here, they basically just go down the hit point chain. Eliwood should actually attack next, since he'll heal Morgan less. Yep.
Just as I planned.
Then Peony ends the match. Nice and clean. Alright, on to the next one. This is going to be another fun one. I have not seen a whole lot of fully merged New Year's Lethe's, but she's very impressive at this level, especially with 3 mythics backing her up. And there's a +4 Bramimond, +10 Eliwood, and this Leanne, who's their second dancer, and is also giving a very nice Home Beasts buff to Lethe. This is a pretty tricky setup to approach, I think, just because Lethe is able to get danced by Leanne wherever she moves. And if you try to deal with this side, then Eliwood gets onto you, so there's some tricky stuff going on here. On the other hand, I'm not expecting Morgan to have any problems with this, mostly because we have Panic Smoke.
Okay.
And because we have that, and a Disarm Trap, we can
Got him.
set this turn up very nicely.
What can
Oh,
I do?
and we found both of the real ones already.
The glimmer of life.
Breaking this Panic Manor is important. It's upgraded enough to actually hit Morgan, so we don't want to have to worry about that. Okay,
If you
to
say
just
so.
smite air over here. I'm not worrying too much about visible buffs for Morgan, since there's lulls involved, and, well,
Yes.
anything other than those doesn't really concern Morgan very much at all.
Good morning.
We'll break that tactic room to get it out of the way,
Of course.
and we'll break this too. Okay, and from here we should just be able to go in on this.
Maybe this way.
I'm actually going to attack into Eliwood here because that lets us panic Lethe before their turn begins.
Right, boss?
And we'll just smite Milla over this way.
It will be done.
The glimmer of life.
and get air in position to pick up the pot next turn. Bramimonds should be the only one who actually does any damage here at all. And it's just not enough to
You
stick.
won't win like that.
And now they're just going to go down the health chain.
Just as I planned.
This really was a great week to start using Morgan. He's such a good answer to hell. Alright.
What's the plan?
Yep. Okay. So it's very easy for us to pick these pots up and clean the match.
Got him.
Goodness.
And down goes Leanne. Nice and neat. On to the next one. This is an interesting match, partly just because I don't actually know how Zane's weapon is going to interact with Morgan's. It's not something I really thought to test or really look into much, since Zane is a really rare sight on defense teams. So this will be interesting to see, especially since this is a very invested Zane. Even without marches, this is a really premium kit. And I think this is one of those kits that he can work really well with, too. The star of their team is a +10 Marth with Spiral Infantry Pulse. It's very solid. And the sleeper hit of their team is this Genny, who is a major threat, honestly. His Refine is actually really solid for just making her a lot more of a problem to deal with. And they're backing them up with triple mythics, Sothis and Bramimond, and Triandra. His Infantry Pulse actually gets a lot of work done for their team. It doesn't quite enable Zane's Glimmer immediately, but it does give Sothis an instant Sirius, and Bramimond usually an in-combat Luna. I'm going to take a few turns to get this started, and I'm going to need to make sure I keep Genny isolated for the first 2 turns, just to stop Restore from doing any nonsense.
Got him.
I just need to test these traps, and I need to break this tactic room as well. Okay, that was real. Good.
The glimmer of life.
So I can just do this. That's not real.
Will be done.
What can I do?
Start breaking our way up here.
Good morning.
And we'll get Morgan out of the tactic room range. This tactic room's actually really upgraded, which is a bit annoying, but that's okay.
Goodness. Yes.
So this is the real trap.
What's the plan?
And we're going to get Morgan up here so that he can get onto this tactic room space after getting a smite
If
from
you say
Dogger.
so.
Maybe this way.
Right, boss.
We'll wait one more turn just so we can get the full set of buffs from Morgan. And this turn I'm going to switch the isolation
Like
column
this.
here, which is going to, it'll let Genny use Restore, but just in case just in case I don't know how this weapon works properly with Morgan's, it means that Zane will never actually get danced even if he manages to survive the combat. And Genny should always restore Marth here.
Of course.
here. And we're ready to get going the next turn. That's a little annoying, but it's okay. Morgan shouldn't need to worry about 10 missing hit points.
Okay.
Yep, down goes Sothis. And I'll leave Mila here since Genny should spend her turn restoring Marth, and that means we get to isolate her for the next turn.
Death's caress.
Okay, and Gunther can just break this. It'll help us get to these pots afterwards. Good. Bram goes next. We're not going to get a very large heal out of this, but that's
Just
okay.
as I planned.
Yeah, Zane does end up surviving. Look at him. Very impressive. Triandra's isolated though, so that's all he can get done.
Just as I planned.
It's hard to tell with the way his weapon works, but I think that actually neutralizes his penalties that Morgan's usually getting advantages from. So from here things should be pretty straightforward.
Like this.
Just going to flip Peony over here, and we'll finish Zane off.
Good morning.
Then we can dance Morgan,
What can I do?
break our first pot, and since Genny's isolated, you're not getting your buffs
What's the
healed
plan?
off, so we'll just enemy phase you pretty heavily from here.
Got him.
Yes.
Just as I planned.
And even though Genny's actually out of range of Morgan's debuffs,
Goodness.
between Gunthra and, well, just Gunthra really,
Of course.
she's still in a lot of trouble here.
Okay.
Maybe this way.
Yep, and we can just finish her off here. It's an interesting match. Alright, on to what should be the last couple, I hope. This one is going to be a bit of a straightforward match, I think, for this late in the week. I've got a couple of in-season legendaries with Corrin and with Celica. I've actually been thinking about using Corrin in the defense before. I don't usually like using legendaries on defense teams, but it's a fun thought if I ever get experimental. You're also using this Lethe, who's a great answer to a lot of threats, and yeah, she can do a lot of damage very easily. I've got this +5 Yune and a bonus weak Hell, and a Peony. Using this many greens on a team is risky, I think. It does leave you pretty vulnerable to a strong red tank, just because of the triangle advantage.
Goodness.
I'm going to take a
It will be
turn
done.
to
The glimmer
just
of life.
test this trap,
Good morning.
and then we should
If
be
you
able to
say
get this
so.
started shortly after that.
Death's caress.
Most of the concern with using Morgan here is just making sure we handle Corrin properly. I'm isolating Peony to make sure that Corrin doesn't get to catch up here. Well, I don't think she'd actually do a whole lot of damage to Morgan.
Yes.
There's no reason to risk it.
Okay.
And we can just take Hell out here. This also probably isn't necessary, to be honest, but Lethe can get a little spooky, and I'd rather not take chances.
What can I do?
Okay. And
Like
we can
this.
flip Air over this way to help pick these pots up. I think Yune's going first here just
Just
because
as I planned.
if Lethe attacked in first, Morgan would actually heal back quite a bit. And she's moving in here. Celica will get some damage in too, thanks to her weapon, but it's nothing lethal.
Checkmate.
So, in spite of what I said a moment ago about trying to make sure we play safe around Corrin, I'm actually going to pick off Peony here, and then have Morgan just retreat. Even though we will take this Bolt Tower and a hit from Corrin, I'm not too worried about it, because without any support, Corrin isn't actually going to accomplish a whole lot. And this way we can guarantee that she's moving this way instead of Peony potentially running off to the right side
The glimmer of
to
life.
guard the pots.
Of course.
I'm pretty sure she's focused on our Peony anyway, but
I
there's no
bestow my
reason to risk it.
blessing.
Got him.
Like this.
And I guess I didn't have to worry at all. Right, so from here it should be
Death's caress.
very direct. I don't think Morgan has any problems finishing Corrin off here.
Okay.
No, definitely not.
You won't win like that.
Alright, that went pretty well. On to, hopefully, the last match of the week. So this is going to be a fun way to finish the week. It's a rematch, so I'm not always really sure what to expect out of these, but this Sturdy Impact Deathblow Bramimonds was a promising start. They've also got a Farsave Brave Edelgard, terror of the meta, and this +10/+10 Eliwood with double attack speed solo, also lunge into Panic Smoke. It's a very solid kit. They've also got a Duo Leaf +2 with another solo skill, and a bonus weak help, and a +10 Eldigan. This is a pretty solid team overall. I'm not sure about keeping the Eldigan all the way over here. I think it makes it a little tricky for him to help dance anything except Bramond. To be fair, dancing Bramond is a great idea, but the other thing that might be a problem with this, and that I'm actually planning to use to clear this map pretty easily, assuming I've figured this out properly, of course, is that these solo skills can backfire pretty horribly if the defense actually finds itself in a cramped position where they can't actually use them. Now, that might not seem too doable, considering that it's a little hard to ask to tank everything at once,
Of course.
but I'm pretty sure Morgan can handle
The
this.
glimmer of life.
Yeah, that was real.
If you say so.
What's the plan?
I'm just going to take this first turn to clear up some of the
It will
stuff
be
in the
done.
way. And we'll pull on the second turn. This Panic Manners tile is actually the perfect spot to tank from,
Got him.
since it gives us a way to force Leaf to attack before anybody else, because he's the only one who does damage. And also means that we get to charge Soul without having it get wasted by Fatal Smoke,
What's the plan?
which is very important.
Maybe this way.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'll just have her open this up, and
What
we
can
can
I
have her
do?
pick up the second pot next turn. Yep, Leaf goes in first. Very helpfully charges Soul for us. Eliwood should be the next one to attack, even though he has nowhere to use his solos from, since he heals Morgan the least.
You won't win like that.
We still heal for quite a chunk, though. Edelgard moves in next, but, well, she does not fare very well here. And now Bram can finally move in and attack. But at this point, we've stabilized, and Morgan can just heal back again.
Just as I planned.
And, well, poor health. She has not had a good week with Morgan. Eldigan's kind of stranded at the end here, and, well, it's very for us. Easy for us to just pick up this last pot and close out the match.
Checkmate.
It's a nice clean finish to the week. I honestly had a lot of fun with this week. Morgan turned out to be an incredibly strong carry, and I'm really glad that I tried him out. I'm also very glad to have him on the team. I'm planning to keep him around in the long term. He'll be a great way to help supplement things, especially over these next few light seasons when it's hard to use the double carry styles that I was enjoying before we entered Docker's bonus weeks. Next week should be fun too. I'll probably get back to basics with Kronya and Oliver, but we'll see. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.